So in this blog, I'm going to talk about the sport that I chose last week, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and specifically I'm going to talk about commentary in a broadcast, a live broadcast of this event, or this game. So I'm going to use archived videos of these live broadcasts broadcast to many people online, which involve two commentators talking about this sport. So for the speech situation, it's a Super Smash Bros. Melee tournament, generally in a large room with a bunch of people at the event and a big stage with two commentators. The speech event would be commentary on a Super Smash Bros. Melee match, with the genre being remarks on gameplay, metagame analysis of the performance of certain players, and various jokes and pertinent pop culture references. Participation, who can speak and be listened to. Generally, the commentators are the only ones who speak and are listened to by the viewers online. Well, in this case, since it's archived, it's not going to be the live viewers, it's going to be us, but generally the first audience is the live online viewers. So topic is pretty important. A big issue in commentating these days is people staying on topic. It's pretty easy to be talking about gameplay and then it reminds you of some pop culture reference or something funny, and then suddenly you're talking about that and not the game, which discourages viewers from tuning in because they're not getting feedback on the game and commentary about the game. They're just getting two guys arguing or telling jokes. Managing conversations is equally important. Playing off of one another and taking turns is a big problem in commentary because since it's not a premeditated or pre-made dialogue, the commentators don't necessarily know when to talk, so they just make it like a conversation, as in one commentator will make a remark and the next commentator will say, "Oh, I agree," or "I see that," or "definitely," and then give their own opinion or a new statement. So in making it like a conversation, since humans are used to turn-taking in conversations, they make it so they don't have to have a dialogue, or it doesn't have to be scripted for them to take turns effectively. Let's see. Moving on to, I just wanted to show you a quick clip of the video of a video, which is of two high-level players playing at a recent tournament, and so this is the beginning of the match. I'll just explain a little bit, since in my last blog I didn't explain very well. I'll explain what they're saying.
Since I found out that Armada was out of the tournament, will the GOAT be able to reclaim his historic... He was always up against Hungrybox for the longest time, and then recently it seems like Hungrybox kinda has his number.
So in this little snippet, a couple things. Vocabulary: GOAT. They say Mango, this player, is trying to be the GOAT, or the greatest of all time. It's an acronym that they use, and additionally, he's saying, "Oh, Mango has been down against Hungrybox in the past," and so that alludes to previous gameplay and presupposes knowledge on the viewer's part. So they're saying, "Oh, the language they're using and the things they're saying is for an audience of people who have seen this before and have watched it." So moving on to the second prompt, in terms of the Yid Army, I liked Frank Lampard's comment in the BBC article. He says, "Racist chanting is against the law," which sort of resonates with me in that when asked, should these people be allowed to say this? No, they shouldn't, because it's against the law. So regardless of what you think, if the law is correct or not, this is one of the major tenets of society, is that we follow laws and adhere to laws. And if you don't like that, then you should be able to change it, ideally. But even if there was no such law that prohibited this, I would say absolutely not, just because it disparages people based on disparaging people based on ethnicity or sexual preference or religion or anything like that shouldn't happen, in my opinion. As an example, a couple months ago, there was an incident between two high schools at a basketball game. A Jewish high school, well, not Jewish high school, but a high school of which the population was primarily Jewish, and a Catholic high school. And this consisted of the primarily Jewish high school. There was a chant that said, "Where are your girls?" to the all-boys Catholic school, taunting them. And in response, the all-boys Catholic school yelled, "You killed Jesus! You killed Jesus!" Which is definitely an anti-Semitic remark. And I think it's a similar situation that sports, obviously people get really into sports, and whenever there's strong emotions, some people will take that as an opportunity to voice disparaging remarks about someone. And I personally think that should be disallowed, but the difficult part with that is that people will say, where do we draw the line? Can I call this guy dumb, or is that too hurtful or disparaging for you? So I think that a larger conversation needs to be had about it beyond just, no, it shouldn't be allowed, just because there's a lot of factors to take into account in terms of what can and can't be said, or what should and shouldn't be said. Moving on, I interviewed my friend Amanda, who is super into the Olympic marathon. When asked, how obsessive are you about the marathon, she responded that she's definitely more than the average person. She watches it every time that it's on, every time that it's broadcast, and follows it before and after, in terms of the warm-up and the training beforehand. And then in terms of identifying with the viewership, I asked her about how her different indicators of identity influenced how she identified with the rest of the viewership of the marathon, the rest of the supporters. She said that in terms of religion, sexual preference, and education, she experienced no effect on her identifying with the rest of the supporters, but she said gender. She said for gender, as a female, she felt more a part of the group, since female runners are still in the process of becoming well known, and people are always focusing on the male runners. She said that being excited about the female part of the race, or the women's marathon, made her feel that she was supporting a female movement. In terms of ethnicity, she said that typically white Americans people don't root for white Americans to win the race because they're not favorites. Generally, the favorites come from African nations, and therefore don't share an ethnicity with my friend, who is an L1 English speaking white American. And so generally people in the U.S. Who are white Americans aren't voting or aren't rooting for the people of their ethnicity to win, which she said was sort of an interesting change from other sports. And lastly, she said language. She's always reminded of the globalization of English, because when these non-native English speakers or winners of the race from countries that don't speak English, or that whose official language or language spoken there is not English, the winners still always speak in English in their winning speeches, and so that reminds her that that English is becoming increasingly globalized and used around the world.